Hello everybody. I'm going to choose to stay anonymous. I would like to introduce this presentation today just with a brief overview of why we're making this video. This video is of great urgency, I feel, and the reason why we're making this video is to offer the full extent of which we feel we can provide some support by way of providing some information to do with the atrocious circumstances at the moment that we are experiencing from our current government in relation primarily to, in this case, the forced closure of the Indigenous communities of Australia. This is just totally unacceptable in any modern society of today. It breaches just about every human right other than killing people, but you might as well be killing them spiritually to be forcing these people from their land. To make a statement that this is a lifestyle choice clearly demonstrates the total disrespect and inept and lack of intelligence from the kind of people who have been voted in, sadly, by the Australian people to run this country. And I would seriously question that when we say run this country. I would say, more to the point, violate this country and violate the people. So why we're here today is to firstly point out what we feel and know to be extremely wrong in all aspects of what has been taking place and appears to be steered by some corruption, as opposed to a humanly just society run by a proper democratic government. So what I would like to express of importance for the people today is the better definition in the way of meaning and identification for who we the people are. And when I say we the people, I don't just mean the Indigenous people, but I also mean the white people as well. As a nation of people, we are also here present, one would hope, with spirit. So just as we have the physical world, the temporal world, we have the spiritual world and our sense of spiritual belonging. And I would like to provide in this presentation, and please bear with me because this is unscripted, this is simply straight off the bat, one take, with very limited editing. So I may appear a little bit over the shop, but I would like to discuss a path for a remedy. And that path for a remedy resides in the rights of people as recognised not only in the Constitution or the laws of this land, but also internationally, as what is recognised that I will be pointing out by the man, the former Australian politician named Doc Evatt, who went to great lengths to establish the International Charter for Human Rights after the Second World War. So the remedy I would like to put forward, which to this point in time I do not believe has been put forward. Some of the things that I would like to point out may not have yet been mentioned or brought to the fore by the judiciary. Now, we have many good people working in the judiciary of this country. However, the problem is the extent and limitation that they have as a result of the oath that our judiciary have taken, which is swearing an oath to uphold the Crown and the rule of law. Now, that is a very important factor that we need to take into consideration, and I'm referring to the point being the Crown, the definition of the Crown. Firstly, what does the definition of the Crown really mean? So if the judiciary, and within it, being a mixed bag, there's good and bad apples in every crew, but I'm more for this purpose appealing to the honourable side of the judiciary, for which to a large extent they are very well with what I'm about to point out, as has been pointed out by Geoffrey Robertson QC, and he makes mention of that in his book, How Australia Can Win Back Its Statute of Liberty, because our liberties, how I see it, are being violated, have been violated, and have got a very savage track record of violation in this country against the very nature of human rights, allodial to us all. As Geoffrey Robertson QC pointed out, that here in Australia we have a very dysfunctional or inoperative system. Unlike the British Parliament, which has the Privy Council being the highest judicial council serving in England, which was established primarily to act as a filter over the government, because the government have tendencies due to their lack of due diligence or knowledge or contempt or various other agendas, which we won't go into, to have a tendency of railroading the rights of people and making various kinds of violations upon people. So the Privy Council was established to act as a filter and to test law and to keep the buggers honest. Now in Australia, sadly, as was pointed out by Geoffrey Robertson, is that we do not have the essential services of the likes of a Privy Council. So our government, primarily, one could say, may be acting without discipline or filtering, in accordance with law, and they certainly are not compliant of our Constitution, which was very well drafted by good men. The Constitution is the essential keys that enables the prosperity and the sanctuary of our rights and our equity of our Crown Commonwealth. Now, many a good judges and QCs would be very well aware of the difficulties that they face when they see these appalling decisions and actions being taken by our, what I would suggest, malfeasant or even liable ministers of Parliament to commit an act against peoples, and in this case the original people, of the highest spiritual belonging to their own cultural lands. Their DNA goes back many thousands of years, connected to those locations where they still reside, and their ancestors from 40,000 years plus resides. They are living on their land, and their land is their temple. I would like to cast a line, a hand to any a good judge or QC in this matter of equity that's here being tested between the people of this country, and I'm talking the first Australians, who have rights just as we are meant to have rights, the white Australians also, the second Australians, and that the laws not only be tested but be upheld. And that would mean a returning of our rights that have been usurped away from us, of which many of our rights have been usurped away from us, which does not dilute the fact that our laws still exist. So the remedy here today that I'm speaking of is about the process of enacting and contracting a rightful process by head of the Crown. And the Crown I will refer to being the knowledge and the joining of they who know in spirit and mind that they are the equity constituting the Crown Commonwealth, the Crown of the Commonwealth. What many people are not aware of, yet our government took good notice of it, is when the Queen handed back over the rightful equity of the Crown of the Commonwealth as she stepped aside. The position for executor to the rightful management of the equity, meaning the estate of Australia, meaning the Commonwealth, and its crown, meaning we the people. Yet we were asleep. How were we to know what that meant? Well, in that vacant position that was now thrown to the wolves, our government stepped into those shoes, and by way of presumption and sleight of hand and procedural manoeuvres, took away the foundation and the equity and our rightful position of executorship. And I would suggest that they have been running under presumption that they being the executors of the estate, for which they did not found. We founded the equity. We created the equity. The estate belongs to us, not the government, who are the trustees. And when one knows their right, and it is their right to know their position at law, to know oneself, to know your right at law, you will recognise and realise when you comprehend who you are, that we are not only the beneficiaries of the estate, we are in fact actually the executors when we know this. So from a point of executorship, I express my deep concerns that everybody recognise the merit for what truth may be in what I'm saying to you here today. Because within it holds the process when challenged in a high court or an international court, that what the government is doing might just very well constitute, in accordance with the definitions, an act of war, with the violations that they assume that they have the right to remove the first Australians from their Indigenous lands. So the key to the remedy of what I'm saying is in knowing trust law. But it goes quite deeper than that. If this was my claim, or this is my claim, I'm claiming my right to support the position of law and the humanity of our black brothers and sisters, and that their rights be acknowledged and fully put into a position of protection, that they are honoured and their rights are acknowledged and handed back to where they belong, in their hands. Not for mining companies, not for our puppet governments to play chess with or to bargain with. In the systematic sell-off of this country, in full compliance of Agenda 21, I might add. Look up Agenda 21 on YouTube and you will realise why the government have been going down this path and what it's all for. It's quite draconian. So because we don't have a Privy Council in this country, it is up to the position of the Crown to be returned. The Crown of the Commonwealth, meaning exactly that. The wealth of this country. When we capture, through our expressed will, our rightful position over the Crown that we are, peacefully, we are the right of the Crown over the Commonwealth. We can, therefore, issue the instructions from our expressed will as a nation that the judiciary, in its highest form, be contracted into action to call upon the government and to have the full authority to audit the government on their positions of breach that may have occurred by way of definition in accordance with International Charter for Human Rights, and also of their position as trustees of the equity of the people. So, essentially, what I am calling for here is the rightful elders of the first Australians, the original people, our black brothers and sisters, delegates from their customary council of lawmen and lawwomen to come forward and to join with the honourable members that serve in the highest levels, the highest ranks of our judiciary in this country, and together put forward their claim by way of instructional order to the judiciary to contract them under the Crown, which amounts to a King's or Queen's order, for which the position is rightfully ours, not the government's, once it has been announced. This can result in the instructional order for the full return and protection to the status of sovereign sanctuary of the people and their rightful estate. And so it be for eternity. And this is how it should be. Thank you. Hello everybody. This message has been put together on short notice as a very important and urgent message that we feel is the least that we can provide in some form of assistance, should this be utilised for the purpose of assisting in the benefits and causes for a healthy outcome to the draconian situation that is currently impending and being usurped over the original people of this land. And I won't refer to them as Aboriginal. I will refer to them throughout this recording as the original people of this land. Within a law system, as understood by the white man, they recognise a saying that first in time, first in law. And I'm just going to hold up this book here by Henry Reynolds, who wrote this book, Law of the Land, which is a good read, and I would advise people to, if they get the opportunity, if they can find this book, to have a read for those who have an interest in this subject that we're here addressing today. The reason this presentation that I'm putting forward here today is done at very short notice. It's a one take. It probably won't be edited, so you must excuse any errors that may occur in any of this. However, I'm going to do my best and hand this over. This is not my stage, because I am here today and I have specifically asked for assistance for the spirits who still linger in this land, and they being the original people, and many of them whose spirits still wander and are lost due to the fact they've never been recognised for the atrocities that have occurred on this land and the war that took place against them. The lesser told history of Australia is shameful. And now, 200 years on, since colonisation, the British Empire, we are still experiencing absolutely archaic treatment and behaviour by what I would suggest is malfeasant behaviour of our inept politicians. One in particular, all of whom, I might add, are contracted to the corporation, being the corporate government, which they are, registered in Washington, DC. You may not be familiar with this, but they do. They are. They're very familiar with this because they know what I'm talking about. In effect, what that means is that the Crown Commonwealth of Australia no longer is effective, to which its true beneficiaries it was meant to serve, of which we are still entitled. As for the first Australians, the originals before us, they're being persecuted right now. And I would like to just quickly include and take people back to a point last year where I was absolutely horrified when I heard on the news over the radio that a man by the name of Andrew Forrest, better known as the mining magnate that he is, a billionaire, one of the wealthiest Australians, who has made his money from digging up Indigenous lands, and possibly sacred to these people, our original people. And he was commissioned by this current Liberal government to do a report, a recommendation proposing what the future should be in relation to Aboriginal affairs in this country. I was absolutely shocked of the stupidity and the fraudulence of hearing this, and hearing this was even more extraordinary to demonstrate how brazen it is that someone who is a white man, who is a billionaire with mining interests, was commissioned by the government. Well, you might just well ask yourself, what on earth does a director of a big corporation whose interests are in mining, since when do they have anything to do with the welfare and the social concerns of a nation's people? Very disturbing. This demonstrates to me what I would only consider as a form of corruption that has taken place over what we are led to believe is a democratic-run government of Australia or society. Well, you can put that aside because that is an absolute fraud to think that you are living here in a democracy. When you vote, what you are voting for is more of the same from puppet governments who are run and controlled by corporations and big financial interests. And I would suggest that when we instate under the presumption of what is meant to be a democratic society, we have a governance system. I've spoken about this before and I'm going to retouch on it. The people are the equity of this country, and that includes its assets and its natural resources and its habitats. The Homo sapiens species, regularly referred to as a human being, is no different from any other species that inhabits an ecosystem, a natural system. The original people of this country, Australia, are a necessity and an imperative part of the entire balance and the ecosystem that lived in harmony for thousands of years, whose DNA is now formally recognised as the oldest DNA of any race currently existing on the planet. So I refer to them as the first people, not just of Australia or the old Gondwana land, of which we are still central to, but of this world we live in. To better understand the needs, the requirements, and the importance of the spirituality, which is equal to food, the connection to nature, and that they are one with nature, they are inseparable. Our original people understand something the white man as a whole is void, has walked away. His spirit is disconnected from this land. He does not understand the original people of this country. He does not understand nature nor his connection to it because he has drifted from it. And now I'm going to jump forward into what I would suggest is worth investigating. And I'm going to put a suggestion forward that places a jeopardy over what we see as an existing system, which I feel, and I'm sure I have many people will agree upon this with me, including many very well qualified people of the judiciary, and I'm talking about High Court judges and QCs, that the kind of malfeasance and contempt, failure of duty of care that this Liberal government are endeavouring to implement in the forced closures of the Indigenous communities of Australia, I would suspect, on closer examination, may in fact actually constitute an act of war against the people belonging to this land and the violation under international law of their sovereign human rights. And while we're on the subject of human rights, I would like to take you back to a very significant point in history that occurred from here out of Australia that went global, and an achievement was met, and that was by a man of the name Doc Evatt, an Australian parliamentarian after the Second World War, took it upon himself to initiate the project globally to create what we currently know today as the International Charter for Human Rights. He somehow managed to get countries such as Russia, Germany, the United States, as well as every other country that is signatory to the Charter for Human Rights, to make sure that the violations and the atrocities against people and their rightful place of belonging, their domain, their sovereignty, their rights, allodial from birth, their birthright, the specification of law, allodial, born to you as your right of belonging. You are at one with the land, you are not separate of it. Nobody owns the land owns us. We are from the dust and we return to dust. Our blood is like that of the water and the minerals of the earth. To think that we are higher and mightier because we are in a position of political advantage does not give any politician, Prime Minister, the right to assume that with the tick of a pen or his word has the right to remove the sovereign people, the Homo sapiens species, from his natural environment. What is not necessarily understood by the white people who have never lived at one with the land, lived off it and had the land provide for you as your true home and your habitat and your spiritual belonging, is to know the importance of what the land is. One of the protocols of war is that when you invade a country, you must take out and destroy its places of worship and its religion and force them to your way of beliefs, which is a little bit like what we're seeing from ISIS at the moment, beheading everybody where they come to in foreign countries for simply being of a different religion, a different belief. And here we have, in what is supposed to be a civilised Western country, supposedly a democracy, supposedly a country of civilised people who are meant to recognise human rights. And we are endeavouring to force the original people from their rightful, cultural, spiritual, physical land of belonging. Their land, could be said, is how we view ourselves with our religion. They belong spiritually, physically, at one with the land. If you try and force them away or remove them from their land, you remove them from their belonging. Not just physically, but spiritually. You separate their soul. To my way of thinking, but correct me if I'm wrong, research the definition under the protocols of war. What constitutes an act of war? Now, years ago, we had a monumental case in the High Court known as Mabo. Mabo proved that the original people, amongst themselves, recognised individual sovereignty and boundaries amongst their own. They were never the conception that the white man labelled them as terra nullius. They belong and they have status. They have customs and they have rights. And their rights was always practised and recognised as they belonged to their lands and their territories and was recognised amongst their peers and neighbouring tribal peoples. Boundaries were mostly observed and respected because it was their law, meaning allodial. We are all allodial, and the indigenous people still have allodial right. This can never be forcefully removed or taken away. They can be blocked or they can be forced from their land, but it does not separate them from their right. You cannot diminish or dissolve this right. Now, the important factor here, which may hold the turning point, the keystone, that as a minister, any member of parliament, that they are in fact established and hold their position under a ministerial oath of office, and that they be sworn in to hold their position under oath, that joins them in compliance to serve under the laws. And those laws are to serve and acknowledge and to recognise and act upon the expressed will of the people. Now, the will not meaning after you have become deceased. We are talking about the will in the living point of time, meaning now. Location here, residing within. We all reside here within. The location and the time being now, here now. Here now is the expressed will, not only from myself, but I would suggest is the sentiment of all the people that this presentation represents. And we present it here and now in now present time as an expressed will to the ministers, all ministers under oath. And hear this, Tony Abbott, that as a minister under oath, you are a trustee. All assets, meaning equity, meaning land, meaning ecosystem, meaning habitat, meaning minerals, meaning water, meaning humanity, equals the combined equity that we are. We are not separate of. We are allodial. The equity that belongs to us is ours, not yours, and not to be tampered with. I express this from my will to you as a public notice, as this is being served here now, as the sentiment of the people behind me. that our expressed will is, and being here recognising that we are the beneficiaries of the equity of the crown. The crown meaning belonging to us. The crown commonwealth as shared by true definition of the meaning, and not the commonwealth government which no longer exists. You are the corporate government, you are not the commonwealth government. Although you have joined your name as one, the Commonwealth Government of Australia, you are not. You are the government, the corporate government that has gone AWOL. You are acting in malfeasance as a corporate government. You cannot be our government, because as our government you have sworn an oath, meaning you are the trustee over the equity which belongs to the beneficiary. We are the beneficiaries, and the original people go further than being simply the beneficiary. They hold allodial status, and that is pact. That is stronger than title. That is pact. It can never be unknitted. It is set. It has status of permanence. And to interfere with that is the violation under international law which Doc Evatt, the mighty Australian who fought for human rights to establish what is now currently known as the International Charter for Human Rights. It is very unfortunate that the government seem to have gone AWOL in their comprehension of the equity that they are instated as trustees to serve under oath for the wishes, meaning the expressed will, of the beneficiaries, of which we now rise to this occasion to inform you and instruct you that we are here not only as the beneficiaries of the equity, that you are entrusted to serve us in accordance with our expressed will and under full accountability, as opposed to your corporate government of malfeasance that you have become. And I make this statement here, that we the people wish from our will and instruct you that the rightful return of the equity is handed back to us under our instruction to inform you that we are taking executorship, a rightful position of equity under our executorship, to execute this instruction to you the trustees, that you serve us, and that any corporation you have signed an alliance to is not a part of us. It can never be a part of us. And it certainly does not have any lawful position to steal from us, whereby you acting as the agents of stealth and theft over our equity, nor the right to assume that you can remove the original people as one from their land. And I remind you, the original people means first in time and at law. First in time, first in law. And in any high court, you will know the position of the executor in accordance with the equity. And in this case, I am referring to the Crown Commonwealth, being we the people, and no one else. We have awakened to our position from maturity, that we know who we are. And we are certainly not who you are treating us as. And as a white fella, I stand here today as one with my black brothers and sisters, because we know who we are. Our spirits are all from the one tribe. We are here on earth to remember who we are, and you have forgotten who you are. And you are out of control. You do not hold the power simply because you wield the might of a gun or hold the position of Parliament. Your lawful duty is to the expressed will of the people, as quoted by Arthur B. Cresby. You must comply with the expressed will of the people, because this is the trust that we hold, and you are the trustee, and we are not just the beneficiaries of the equity. We are in fact the executors of the Crown Commonwealth. It may have been vacant for a small while people were sleeping, and you took it and ran. You joined yourself and you annexed yourself to our estate, our equity, and you've been using it as your own. You've been selling it off. You've been benefiting from the spoils, and so have all the corporations that you've done deals with. If we were doing business in this country with the mafia, we'd be getting a better deal than what you bastards have given us. And under international law, I would suggest that you are committing crimes of war against your people. And I would remind you to remember the actions that were taken place by the Jews after the fall of the Nazi Empire. Their mission was relentless: to pursue those who violated international law and committed crimes against them. What makes you think you are any different to a Nazi regime? You are not acting in accordance with a democracy. It's disgusting.